Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode of Let's Make a Game. So what I'm going to do today is I actually want to show you how I'm going to be doing the map for at least the playtest version of Let's Make a Game, so that if making hex and counter maps is something that you're interested in, this may be something that's of interest to you. So what do I have here? Let me just actually create a new layer and fill it with white. Talk amongst yourselves. Alright, it's actually filled up with desert. So, here we actually have all the hexes, and as you can see there are a lot of them, and they have got coordinates and center dots. You can obviously add and take those away as you choose, but what I want to show you is actually some of the ways that I'm going to be doing rivers and the way that I'm going to be doing mountains. What I'd like to do is I'd like to just fill the area with grass for now. So I've got this sort of second layer here, which is underneath the hexes. I'm going to pick a color for the grass, and I'm going to pop that on there. That's a decent enough color for grass. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit till I get close to 100%. Because what I want to do now is I want to add a little bit of a texture to the grass layer, so that it's not just a flat green, which is not very exciting. So what I do is I double click on the layer, and I come over here to pattern overlay. So when I turn it on, the first thing it has is this hideous pattern here, so that's not ideal. So let's choose a texture. Now I've got a bunch of different textures here. That's quite a nice one, but the problem is it's obviously opaque. So what we will do is we'll change the blending mode, and we'll just go through them. That's quite a nice one. Linear burn is quite good. Linear burn works well. I like linear burn. Let's stick to linear burn. So what this is actually doing is it is darkening the base color underneath it, and you can obviously adjust the scale. I think quite that's a decent size scale. Opacity 100%. You can obviously adjust the severity of it. Let's get it to about 70%, and I think that looks very, very nice. Now you can't see it in too much detail, but when you're far away, but if you get up nice and close, you can see that it's not just a flat green, which is great. So this layer, I'm going to, where do I rename the layer? Do I just click on it like that? There we go. So this is going to be my grass. Oh, goodness gracious, grass. So there we go. And this layer is the hexes. Alright, so at the moment you can see we've got a nice base to start working from. We've got lots of lovely grass, which is nice and green with a lovely texture. Alright, so I'm happy with that. So what I want to do now is I'm going to show you how to do two different things, or two different things that I'm going to be doing. The first thing is rivers. So I'm going to make a new layer that I'm just going to call rivers. Rivers. Alright, what I want to do next is I want to find a color that works for rivers. So it's obviously got to be blue. I quite like a lightish sort of blue for a river, so I'll go with that one. And I'm just going to find a brush that works for me. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can kind of see what it looks like. And I'm going to move the rivers layer below the hexes because I want to still be able to see the outline of the hexes as I go. That's quite nice. Alright, so let me see if I can just soften that a little bit. That's quite nice. Okay, now I'm obviously just going to do this quite roughly, but what I'm doing here is I'm drawing this blue onto the rivers layer here. So let's say we want to have a river that goes from this point over here to that point over there. So what I'll do is I'll just draw this outline. And what's nice is you can keep it kind of fluid because rivers are not rigid, which is an important sort of aspect of a river. There's a little bit. Let's make it a little bit longer. Let's have it come down here. Rivers are cool. They're nice. I love games with terrain features because it just keeps the replayability, not necessarily the replayability, but the variety up. I mean, there's nothing worse. You see certain hex and counter games where they just have blank hex maps, and I think, well, that's not very exciting. It's fine for like a learning game if you're just learning the basics, but if you want to have like a sort of a good gameplay experience, then it's maybe not ideal. So here we've got some rivers, and what I'll do is I'll add a lake as well. So let's say we're going to turn these 3 hexes, or these 4 hexes into a lake. So I'm just going to actually come here and very roughly fill in these hexes. So what's lovely about this is you can kind of keep it quite loose, quite fluid, because the lake is not going to be sort of right up to the hard edge of the hex. That's quite nice. Just going to increase the size of my brush a little bit and color in the rest of this. Just talk amongst yourselves while I do this. So this is a nice river and a nice lake. Now if I wanted to, I could actually connect the rivers to the lake. So I'll do that quickly. So I know this is probably not very exciting, but if you're interested in this sort of thing, then you probably will find it quite exciting. So I just want to find the size. Seems about right. So let's have this shoot up here, and then shoot off into that lake. Let's soften up that transition there a little bit. So we've got a nice sort of little lake system going on here, and it looks okay, but the problem is it doesn't look very realistic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play with the layer styles again. Now layer styles are hugely powerful tools in Photoshop. Let's create a little, why not, let's really go for it here. Have some of this coming up here. Yeah, so this is a nice little sort of island, or yeah, well it is an island. It's surrounded by water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to my layer styles here. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, just so we can get a slightly better idea of what we're looking at. And here are my layer styles. Now what I want to do is I want to actually add potentially some texture to it. So let's try that first. Let's go to pattern overlay. Let's find a pattern that could maybe work. A little bit intense maybe. No, that's concrete. No. Trying to find something that could be slightly waterish. Let's go for that. I'll scale it up and choose my blending mode to linear burn. That's quite nice. And I'll just bring the opacity right down. So now we've got something that just has a little bit of movement to it, which is nice. So that's my pattern overlay. That's great. What I want to do though is I want to add some shore. So what I've found works quite well for that is this outer glow. So if I click on outer glow, choose a color. We want a nice sandy color, so let's find something that's a little more yellow. And I'm just going to play with these. Spread it out a bit, increase the size, maybe increase the jitter a little bit. You want to kind of, noise is nice, you know, noise, opacity. You just basically play with these until you find something that works for you. That's way too big. Bring the opacity back up actually. And just that, actually make it a little bit bigger. That already just makes a humongous difference. Now it's not the most elegant looking thing in the world, because we're looking at it up very close, but from far away, yeah, it's maybe a little bit intense. Let's bring it down a little bit, bring down the size. There we go. All of a sudden we have something that looks a lot closer to a beach. And if we go up close, you can see how it kind of looks very shoreliney, which is great. So those are our rivers. And what's lovely is once you've developed this layer, you can at any point just come here and say, let's say we want to start a river over here, and draw it, and it basically will just maintain that same layer style and just join up with the other rivers. Very nice. So those are rivers and grass with textures, which is great. And the last one I want to show you is a mountain. So if I make a new layer, then I'm going to just come over here and we'll call it mountain. Then what I'm going to do with the mountain is let's pick a brownish color, because mountains are brown, and what brown is actually like a dark orange. Alright, so that we have that. Now let's say over here we want to have some mountain terrain, so I'm going to just increase the size of my brush. I'm just using a standard sort of airbrush, just drawing onto the mountain layer here, and I'm just going to do this. Let's have a mountain that sort of stretches in this sort of direction. It's maybe not the best color. Yeah, I'd probably change the color actually. It's a terrible color. I'm going to do that now. Make it a bit darker. And we'll fill that. Hopefully, there we go. Alright, so there's my little mountain, my little 3-hex mountain. Back into my, well, let me actually move this over to the side here a little bit, so you can get a slightly better view of what happens when I stop playing around with the layer styles. Cool. So what we want to do is we want to add some height and some drama to this mountain. So I'm going to use bevel and emboss and contour. So we're going to increase the depth and the size of this now, and all of a sudden we have a little bit of height to our mountain, or it feels a little bit like a hill. Now I'd probably add a little bit of an outer glow around this one as well, just to soften that that transition to the ground below, so let's add some more brown. Okay, we can increase the size of this. Oh, spread, normal, blending mode. You play around with this a little bit. I mean, this is now I'm really just doing stuff I haven't actually done before. Maybe we could even add a pattern to it, just to give it some texture. I don't know why I always click on that one by mistake. It's kind of a tarmac texture, but there we go. Blending mode. Let's find a blending mode that works. That's alright. Overlay, scale. That doesn't actually look very good. And you can faff around and find things that kind of work for you. What you can do is you can actually then, if you wanted to, duplicate this layer, or copy layer style, I should say, add a new layer. Now, I haven't actually done this. I'm not entirely sure it's going to work, but if I do this, I go paste layer style. Yeah, you can add sort of different layers of sort of height to your mountains. That's slightly interesting. What I would probably do then, I would blend them all together and blur them. And you can even maybe add a shadow. If I add a shadow here, what direction is my shadow? Yeah, now if you change the direction of the shadow, it affects where the highlights are coming from. So let's say we want our light coming from that direction, and we cast a nice shadow onto our mountain, onto the ground. So I'm not mad about that second layer actually, but that's alright. Just to sort of very basically show height and topography. You can have little mountain ridges running along here, which is quite cool. I'd probably, if I was to tweak this slightly, I would tweak the textures if I was to tweak anything, just to give it a little more texture, like rough it up a little bit. But that's very basically, the mountains are still sort of a work in progress, but I'm quite happy with the rivers. And that's how we're going to create these maps. So thanks for watching, take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.